All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great webinar on tap. I am really excited about this. I think it's going to be a great case study. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience, so if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for either of our speakers, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your question and answer interface and type in your question, and we will get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. Also, at the end of today's webinar, we are going to be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is best practices for DevOps transformations in cloud and embedded development. The Konecranes, it's kind of cut off there. So, all right, we have a great webinar on tap. Our speakers today are Marko Klemetti, who is the CTO of Eficode, and Sami Nurmi, who is a test manager and DevOps enabler with Konecranes. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great. So my name is Marko Klemetti. I'm the CTO of Eficode. Just a few words about Eficode, a 400 people organization in 7 different countries. We're currently the only company in the Nordics who has the platinum solution partner for Atlassian in all of the Nordic region. So as said, we do DevOps consultation for our customers and also agile software development. Today's topic will be DevOps transformations, an interesting topic as a whole, but also I'm hoping that you would get something out of just small bites from here and there if you're not running a full transformation. Today I'll be first talking about the transformation and a few key pointers on best practices on doing the transformation and what things you should pay attention to. And then I will hand over to Sami, who will explain how they did transformation at Konecranes. So I'm pretty sure that most of you who are listening to me today have already seen what happened in Mars, just the beginning of this year and still ongoing. You might have also noticed that there was a quote which said that after a successful landing on Mars, Perseverance undergoes a system update. And this system update also includes software updates, which are regular and happening all the time. You probably know the rover traveled to Mars for 7 months. And when it landed, it started updating its software, which is, to me, in embedded world, pretty much the extreme you can go to. And as they are able to do continuous updating of the software, I'm pretty sure that any embedded software developer or development organization today can do that as well. If we look at some of the numbers from various studies like Puppet and Dora and similar state of DevOps reports, we'll see that today half of all companies can do deliveries at least once per week. And when you relate to that number, I'm pretty sure that everybody today listening to me are able to get to that same pretty easily. The modern technology makes that possible. If we look at the embedded software development especially, there are a few key things that make it harder than just having the cloud-based or web applications up and running. The 3 key things here are, the first one is, of course, testing. So instead of having your browser running the tests on a virtual environment, you might actually have to run the tests on a real hardware. You have to have your various customer environments up and running on different configurations and run the tests against those. You might have different hardware versions, and you even have to probably maintain more than one version of your software. So that's definitely a challenge that isn't on, for example, web applications or SaaS services. The second part, of course, is deploying. As already said, from the Mars rover, deployments are not as easy on embedded devices as they are, for example, for web devices or just mobile applications, for example, today. And there we can see a change from the direction of being push, which would be a regular, like normal application deployment would be a push, but in embedded development, you might move already to pull. You might have heard of the term GitOps, which is something that's emerging for the deployments for embedded as well today. And of course, the third one is embedded devices have higher requirements for both the safety of the update. So what if something fails? How do you make sure it's fail safe? And the security, because embedded devices or even embedded environments, edge cloud can be in an environment where you need to make sure that nobody is breaching the security of it. When doing a transformation, jumping out of the embedded environment, whether you're doing it in any environment, there are three things I want to point out from the transformation that you need to pay attention to. And also from the presentation today, you will notice that these are the areas that will be important, whatever you do on the technical side. And the first one is, of course, enabling the healthy culture. So being able to form the organization into form where you're working towards the same goals, you have the psychological safety for failure and trying out new things. In the modern world, technology changes in such a pace that if you're not able to try out new things in a safe environment, you will eventually be left out of some of the newest things coming. Kubernetes is a really good example of that. So now it's already mainstream, but many organizations have started using Kubernetes ages ago because it was part of their DNA to try out new things. The second part is to detach deliveries from releases. And what I mean by this is that the traditional organizations, especially embedded organizations, usually focus on doing a release, which also includes the software delivery. And now, if we're looking at, for example, this perseverance example, you will see that the release was when the rover left, but they are doing deliveries before that, and they're doing deliveries after that. So delivery should become something of a tool in your toolbox that's separated from the releases, where you just deliver always working software wherever your environment is or wherever you have your, say, your embedded device. And then third, if you have seen already the Puppet State of DevOps report from 2020, you will see that 64% of all the respondents have already a DevOps platform in place. And this is also something that's very important in a transformation, to have some sort of a platform where you have your developers plugged into, which is maybe cloud-based or moving cloud-based, and providing a self-service, which means that the development teams can be self-organized and use all of the different tools you provide them to develop and deliver, and then eventually, of course, release their software. 4 key pointers for good transformations, especially in embedded. So the first one is making the testing a common language between all stakeholders. So if we look at test automation, for example, if you write the tests in a natural language, the good examples are, for example, robot framework. You write the test cases in natural language, so you can have the discussion over the features in testing language. And then you just transform that testing into continuous integration, continuous delivery, and make sure that the requirements you wrote are actually tests that are run on the real device. Second one, and this is very much emerging today, adding your compliance and security reporting into your pipeline. So this means that whenever you have your platform, you have your continuous integration pipeline, you will have to add compliance and security into, like baking it directly into the pipeline you're running. And if you look at the security, for example, there's a number of tools. SonarQube started it. Now you have JFrog, X-Ray, for example, Snyk, GitHub have their own security assessment tool. Currently, which you can just plug into your pipeline and make sure that you have a certain threshold of security that you already have covered before planning a release or a delivery. And this is, as I said, one of the most emerging, because it's also become easy enough to do. The same way as test-driven development or unit testing like 15 years ago came to be a majority, it was because it was easy enough to do. This is similar today. The third one, naturally, is putting effort into automated rollbacks and the disaster recovery. So you might have, for example, a bootloader, which I presume is how the perseverance is done, is if you have a failed software update or the transmission cuts, you would have some sort of a bootloader that then recovers the system to the previous known working states and then continues from there. And once you have the disaster recovery in place and the automated rollbacks, you can do on a more lightweight, try and go to start doing the deliveries on embedded environment. Of course, you would probably have your own testing environments first, but then what you would have next is having some sort of a canary release for a certain number of equipment you have, to which you then release your application or new version, and then try out that it's working. The canary releases have been used in web technologies for ages already, but canary releases. So canary release means that you deliver your application version to only a small amount of your users or customers and see how they perform in your metrics compared to the previous version. And if it works better or the functionalities work just right, then you can start spreading it to the whole application or all of your users. For example, Kubernetes is something that provides this almost out of the box to have a delivery to a certain part of your customers and then just expand the delivery to everybody. And in embedded environments, this is also something that you could pretty easily do by selecting the customer base where you make the deliveries, and then if it works, expanding from there. 4 key pointers. I will have the key takeaways after Sami, and now I will hand over to Sami to explain how it was done at Konecranes.
Thank you, Marko. And hello, my name is Sami Nurmi, and I work in Konecranes, which is the world leading company in the world for different kind of lifting devices with digital solutions. And here is our story for the transformation in the embedded world. So first about the background, how the situation was before we started. So we saw the kind of difficulties as clear responsibility of DevOps, and then scattered systems, multiple ways of working, kind of, and then lack of common practices and the overall collaboration with these things. And then we kind of saw that we wasted time to keep up the DevOps systems. And what we had was about the common and flexible tool set in the IoT world. the need is the area where we work with the development is quite large, and the needs and requirements are also quite heavy. Like we develop the embedded system and data lake and AWS solutions and web portals and mobile applications and that all. So we need to have the flexibility. And then we aimed to have the harmonized DevOps practices, so-called guardrailed development was the kind of goal. And then the testing and test automation practices on the CI pipelines. And of course, the simple and secure access management for the whole system. And without forgetting the support but also for the system. Here is the high-level graph of the system what we were building, and here we have the identity and access management system in the left side, and then company Eficode is providing this platform and support for us, and we have the integration so that we can have quite easily the current our current users on the platform. And there we have Helix Team Hub as a version control, but in the same time as an access control where we can handle the different kind of roles and accesses for the developers. And then there is the binary storage and the Artifactory works there. And in the same product family from the JFrog, we have the X-Ray as a security tool for vulnerability and licenses scanning. And then the Jenkins as a CI tool. And inside the Jenkins, we have the multiple machines, for an example, for the test automations like Robot Framework, Postman, the Newman, the command line version of the Postman, Jet-Attack, Proxy, SonarQube, and so on. So this is the kind of the base tool set what we have. And then about the flow of the DevOps, for example, here developers are pushing the code to the Helix Team Hub, and then we automatically wake in the Jenkins, and Jenkins starts the building and first runs the unit tests and does the report. We can use, for example, the SonarQube for those. And then after the unit tests are passed, we can do the deploy for different kind of environments and execute the system testing, system integration testing, and for example, the acceptance testing against those whole systems. And the reporting of the result, we can do many ways via Teams, Jira, Confluence, SonarQube for the developers to go further with the findings. Okay, then about the transformation itself. This is kind of flow we followed in our transformation. We started with very small internal project to avoid the risks, and then we learned by evaluation, and then we got training from Eficode for admin features that then we were able to create the projects and new users on the platform and so on. And then we continued the migration project process with simpler projects on the platform. And then we got more the learning how and kind of had the first steering what we need to change perhaps, and then we got more projects on the migration, and when we had the migration started, we started immediately with Eficode the steering also quite tightly, so we were able to learn and then change the things and so on. And nowadays we have all the time also the steering around the stuff, so we can have the continuous improvement with the things. And here I have the example of the embedded software delivery. This is actually the modem software update on the devices. So in the right corner you can see the device. It can be, for example, it can be test device, it can be real device, it can be simulator where we can run the tests and so on. But the basic process of the delivery or deployment of the new software on the device may start, for example, of the base library update in the left up corner, and then the second option is that we have code update straight in the Helix team up. So when Jenkins pulls the source code and starts the building and running tests and so on, and finally creates the Docker image, which is pushed to the safer Artifactory, updating the stuff there, and then further Amazon ECR system. And then, for example, in the reboot, the device, we have the lift truck in the right down corner. That, but in the reboot, we can update the software there, but that lift truck can be, for example, some kind of other lifting system, lifting device also. So this is basically in high level the base flow. Then current status, okay, maybe some changes after the couple of days, but anyway, 42 high-level project. This contains at the moment 366 repositories, and currently we have 111 users on the platform, and we are growing all the time. Then a couple of learning points. Planning well is the key thing for everything. So then we can plan the process itself, meaning the migrations and so on. Then we can ensure the resources. For example, developers are usually in hurry of their current work, and we can then ensure that we have the time there. And then I would like to highlight also the collaboration here with teams and so on. This is anyway, the systems are kind of we may have the impact in a large area in our development processes. And then planning and scheduling the migrations well, getting the full concentration and support there. Inside the DevOps, there might be kind of a very different kind of skill sets. We may need to some developers do the migrations in different areas in the correct time, and then mitigating the delays with the good planning. And then planning for practices as early as possible, adapting the best practices and guidelines to avoid the next Wild West situation here. And then don't forget the documentation. And that's it. Waiting the questions. And now I would offer the presentation again to Marko.
Yeah, I'll take a few key takeaways of the presentation. So we've been efficient as Finns ever. So very, very specific on what we are saying, and very also saying the only topics that are important. So I would also say that I would also hope that people online would post questions in which Charlene then are going to read out, and we will answer. And you can ask whatever on the transformations. As said, I've been doing them for 10 years already, and Sami has lots of experience on how the Konecranes transformation has been done. And just a few key takeaways before letting Charlene go is always when you start something, developing anything, whether it's a small or big organization, remember to start from small. Piloting is one of the good words used here. So piloting, testing out things, and then making some sort of a plan on expanding it. And this is also why the psychological safety and the continuous learning within an organization is so important. So being able to try out new things, see if they work, and then if they work, trying it out and expanding it outside from where you tried it. The DevOps platform, no matter where you take it, it's just future. So being able to provide what I would call moving DevOps to being no ops, which means that you're automating the parts which are making deployments and starting new projects difficult. Eventually, the developers only want to have their code running on the device. And I know that in embedded environment, you will have also trouble with the hardware design and fitting together the schedules there, and being able to build the software on a living hardware. That's why you need to have some sort of a place where you can take out the problematic parts that can be automated. And today it's DevOps platforms. There you can also add in new functionalities and new practices in the organization, such as security scanning, which Sami also mentioned there. And then, of course, third and most important is enabling testing on a production-like environment. So being able to take your deliveries to be so sure that you can send a rover to Mars and still be sure that you can continuously update the software on the rover, even while you don't have the network connection always on. Thank you.
All right, we have lots of time for questions. If you have a question for either Marko or Sami, please go ahead and use your question and answer tab. We've gotten some in so far, and they're really good ones, so I'm going to dive right into them. But if you do have a question anytime, go ahead and get it on in. We'll try to get to as many as we can. The first question here from Abdel Nasser, who asks, what will be the best way to change the culture to move toward DevOps? That's a question we get a lot.
Yeah, I'll start, and I'm hoping that Sami will also tell a story from the field. So I feel that one of the most important parts is, like, I'm always talking about management buy-in. So to be honest, that's the most important single thing, is to have a management buy-in. So someone from the management who can say that, yes, you can try this out. Yes, you can fail. Yes, you can experiment. But if you don't have that, then you would probably have to go ahead and try things out on your own, and then explain how they did eventually work on what you're doing. So when Docker came out, I'm guessing roughly 8 years now. When Docker came out, there were many companies that started immediately using Docker, but it took like 4 or 5 years before it was even production ready or properly released. And people were running applications on Docker already back then. And some of them were done in such a way that the smart, savvy engineers just made their solutions run on Docker, and then without letting the management know, they did put it live. But that said, one most important part is the management buy-in. And if you don't have that, then of course you have other problems as well. But you can try to convince them by showing some ideas that you have done or being able to experiment on your own region of development. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, actually, excellent points from Marko, and I would like to really highlight the collaboration here and the importance, why we do this, why this all will happen, and so on. So that's the thing from my side.
Okay, collaboration. That's key to every successful project, I think, and in DevOps especially. So great stuff there. Okay, the next question is actually also from Abdel Nasser, who asks the security part into the pipeline. What will be the best way to achieve it? And are there any tools to help automate security? And maybe Sami, I'm not sure if you want to talk about how you guys instituted security into your DevOps pipeline.
Yeah, I may start. Of course, the secure DevOps is one of the topics here, but from my perspective as a test manager, I would like to take the testing in. So for example, the X-ray I mentioned in my presentation gives quite much benefits with kind of a small input. We can quite automatically have the some insurance from there, but also there is the multiple testing activities, how we can ensure the security. For example, system security testing in many levels, and of course we can have this, for example, the SonarQube as a static tool to analyze the software and some vulnerabilities there and so on. So there is kind of, I would say there is no kind of simple answer for that question, but I would like to highlight the testing in many places there. Do you, Marko, have anything on this?
Yeah, so I would say, well, yep, thank you. So I would say that the JFrog X-ray is one of the tools, and then SonarQube, which was also mentioned, which you can bake into whichever pipeline you're running, whether it's Jenkins or GitHub Actions or whatever, like whatever CICD tool you prefer. Those are tools that you can plug in and start with the default configuration. Also, there is the SNYK, SNYK, and then you have, like, GitHub provides a number of various security assessments or security audits. If you have an open source poster, you will already see, like, for example, Dependabot in the work, making your pull requests for you for security fixes automatically. And then there is the GitHub Advanced Security, which you can also use for the purpose. So number of tools, and most of them are just plug-in security additions, which you can configure. And as Sami said, like adding security part into your testing and the whole pipeline and thinking of the DevOps culture in the organization is essential.
All right, great. As I've said before, there's plenty of time for questions. So if you do have a question, go ahead and use either the question and answer tab or the chat tab, and we'll be happy to move it over into the question and answer tab for you. The next question here comes from Mark, who asks, is the crane running Docker to run the Docker service? I think, Sami, that is for you.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Is the crane running Docker to run the Docker service?
Yeah, actually the topic I can't answer very deeply in these questions because I have not done this by myself. The developers are the real experts in this area. But anyway, we can run the, for example, we can run the Docker inside the cranes and so on. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't answer pretty detailed on that question.
Okay. Well, Mark, if you need additional information, please know that the folks at Eficode are going to get a copy of all the questions. And if you do need more clarification, just shoot us a chat and we'll make sure that somebody gets in touch with you for that. Next question is from Linda, who asks, how much overhead software image from Amazon ECR to endpoint device? What is CPU and communication on the Konecranes example?
Rather detailed question.
Right, yes.
I'm not sure if you can address that.
No, I actually lost the question. Sorry about that. Can you repeat it? I can see that there. If I can answer, I can try at least.
Do you need me to read it again for you?
Yeah, please, if you.
Okay, sure. How much overhead software image from Amazon ECR to endpoint device? And then what is CPU and communication on the Konecranes example?
Sorry, okay, this is a bit too difficult question here to answer.
Right, yeah, it's very technical.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, maybe we can get Linda's answer for her offline after the webinar from somebody else in the organization. Okay, all right. Sophie then asks, what if your OS isn't supported by Docker?
I'll pick this one first. So I don't think that Docker is the solution for everything, the same way as Kubernetes is definitely not a solution for everything. They're both good tools for building easily storable images that can be run as environment-like environments anywhere, even your development computer testing, or then eventually in the production environment. And Docker makes many things like storing the containers and networking and such things much easier. But honestly, Docker is not good for everything. And especially, I don't know if you looked at the NASA. So if you're really interested, I propose you go to the NASA rover Perseverance. There is their own article on the architecture of the software within. And they're just using embedded Linux servers, Wind River there. And they don't run Docker, for example. So Docker isn't a solution for everything. And especially if you have an embedded environment, it's probably better to have your own bootloaders and then just a very, very like low-level operating system running, because it's just more simple and it has less failing parts. Do you want to add something, Sami?
No, it's good.
Okay, all right. Great. Moving along here, next question is from Ajoy, who asks, are these security tools providing some sort of containerization? And then in parentheses, to test.
Yeah, so some of the tools do check also the containers and the container security naturally. So one of the big problems with Docker, so I'm an advocate of Docker, so don't understand our containers technology, don't understand me wrong, but they're, as said, they're not savior for everything. And one of the problems is that if you take a so-called rogue Docker image, which you run or build your own containers on, they might have security flaws, or they might even introduce security flaws later. One of my favorite Docker base image variants is called Alpine Linux because it's pretty slim. It turned out that it had a default root password for 3 years in the Docker container. Of course, it has been already fixed, but it's a really good example of a security problem that you could introduce from a so-called third-party dependency. So these tools I've mentioned, some of them also include the container security checking, and there are also proprietary tools for that purpose as well.
Excellent. Okay. All right, guys, just a quick reminder, there's still time for questions. If you do have one, go ahead and put it on in, and we'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. The next question comes from Tan, who asks, does Eficode support AEMP 2.0/ISO 15143-3, the Association of Equipment Management Professionals, and the AEMP 2.0 API? That's a long question.
I presume Tan is referring to the Eficode root, which is one of the DevOps platform options, which is developed by the Eficode company, naturally. But I have to say, we do have an ISO certificate already for the platform, but unfortunately, I'm not sure if it's compatible to this particular one. So we'll have to come back to this later.
All right, great. So Tan, somebody from Eficode will follow up with you post-webinar to get your question answered fully. And so check your email for that. Next question is from Thomas, who asks a long question. So There you go. Our company has grown quite fast due to acquisitions of several companies over the last few years. We are currently in a transition to a common DevOps process, but I find it hard to include all of our departments due to very different ways of working. Also, a lot of different programming languages throughout the organization. Do you have any experience about how to migrate very different environments into a common way?
Yeah, I can also, Sami, if you have something, please do go first, because I can then fill in.
Yeah, I can. In our case, we also had very different kind of languages where we have the code and so on, and for example, the mobile development, and then the embedded system with C++ and so on. So there is kind of we kind of aimed first in one solution, kind of having the one universal tool for everything. We kind of prepared the system to be able to support all the development there. But nowadays we are more moving a bit kind of a other way. Of course, it would be good to have the common base and have the collaboration of the practices, but also kind of keeping in the mind that maybe the tool working for the one thing is not suitable for, or the best one for the all, is kind of my point here.
Yeah, I can also continue with experiences from, for example, gaming and telecommunications environment, which gaming naturally is an environment where the developers usually are so good that they get to decide what technologies and tools, editors, platforms they use. And then for telecommunications, the problem is exactly like this. You have very number of various environments and programming languages, IDEs, pipelines. And the point is you find the common ground. So for this gaming example, for example, what we made there was an engine to transform the basic pipeline template into the environment that was used by this particular development team. And by that way, we had there is like a plugin plugging the systems together so that you have your own environment, which you then maintain the plugin, and the plugin plugs you into the pipeline. So that's one way of solving the problem. And of course, the second one is finding the common ground and then starting to build up from there. And the options, of course, are harmonizing the tools, like two similar tools together, or then building a support for various. But this as said, it's not an easy problem to solve, and it doesn't happen immediately. But if you do it the same way as you would add testing to an application where you don't have any tests, just eating the elephant like in small pieces, or how the saying goes.
Right.
That's the way to go there as well.
All right, great. Gosh, we've gotten so many great questions. And the next one here is from Meta, who asks, Sami, thanks for the presentation. A few questions from my side. How long did it take you to achieve the transformation level at which you are now? And what are the next steps for moving forward for Konecranes regarding its DevOps initiatives? So
yeah,
that's a great one.
Yeah, this is a good question. And I would say that, again, no kind of a simple and clear answer, but I would say that we had everything kind of in place in a half or in a year. So basically at least in a year we got all the products what we had in earlier systems, scattered systems in the place, and then we had at least the of the DevOps, the dev part there. But then of course we need to think about the operation upside also and so on. And we are kind of in that way still. So because there is always the improvements what we need to have there and so on. And about the second part of the question, how we are, the second stuff what we are aiming here is the more into the automated way of the things, kind of the CI pipelines or CD pipelines and that stuff. is ahead.
All right, great. So the next question then is from Kabir, who asks, hi Marko, you have mentioned Docker has some issues. Have you ever tried or considered LXD?
So I'll answer that. Of course, all of the container technologies today have some sort of issues because it changes the way people develop and release software, which means also that the problems aren't always the container problems. It could be that your software architecture simply doesn't support containerization. Or when you build the container images, you notice that they are 2 gigabytes big, which then of course like you get the benefits from the smaller changing images, but still you will have the similar problems as you have in virtualized environments. So as said, I wouldn't bark Docker for, at least for the functionality reasons. The licensing is a different topic, but let's not go there today. I think Kubernetes at least is using container there, like Containerd, and there are a number of other container technologies that are supporting the same Containerd type of technology, such as, of course, Docker, even while most of the images are still built using Docker. So I'm pretty sure that more Containerd supporting container environments or applications such as LXD will emerge, but I'm a strong supporter of mainstream tools because then it's easier to have a longer spawn for your applications and easier to find developers. So yes, I've tried LXD, but I'm not using it daily.
All right, great. Here's another great question. How would you see Kubernetes fit into embedded development? Oh,
this is an interesting question. So yeah. One of our customers, Groke, Groke, they're building software for like vessels, like ships, container ships, and they are running Kubernetes that is running on GitOps, which means that what they do is they have their so-called edge cloud or embedded environment running on Kubernetes. And then with GitOps, they do pulls. So they pull new versions every time they receive an online environment to live internet. They pull the new version and then deploy it in Kubernetes. And that I feel is for many, as said, big embedded environments like embedded software development or then edge cloud, which is not always having the best network connection or is handling so big amount of data that cannot be transferred forward, is to have Kubernetes-like environment. For example, Kubernetes that's then connected to updates or posting the data using, for example, GitOps, or then just like packed information.
All right, great. Guys, if you have a question, go ahead and use your question and answer tab and get it on in. We have maybe 1 or 2 questions here. I don't want to overload you guys though. So, anytime you want to say no more questions, just let me know. I'll stop with the questions. But all right, here's another interesting one here. What experience do you have on testing on an embedded device? I don't know if that's for you, Marko, or Sami.
Sami gets to start with this one.
Yeah, I can start. We can start off after the unit testing. We can start the testing, for example, in containers, running the tests there, and when we continue the building bigger and bigger systems and so on. When we have integrations, then we can have the integration tests between the components or systems, and then for example, in my presentation, I had the whole pipeline for the delivery of the update of the modem software. Then we can have, for example, in the simulator, we can have the testing kind of end-to-end mode and in automated way. That's kind of the stuff where we aiming, but to remember that it's kind of a pretty heavy load of testing already then when we have the huge system and testing in pretty many places, and then the complex will raise when we have wider kind of end-to-end testing mode.
Yeah, we at Eficode are doing collaboration with a number of universities in Europe. And some of those collaborations did spawn last spring a tool which is based on Raspberry Pi. And it's funny how many embedded development organizations don't necessarily initially like Raspberry Pi, but that's actually very affordable and easily pluggable tool for embedded environment. And what we did was we connected Raspberry Pi to a CI pipeline, namely Jenkins at this time. And what that Raspberry Pi did was it had the GPIO pins connected to various embedded devices, and it then was running both the hardware updates, and it was also running a number of test cases running the robot framework, which I mentioned in my part already. And it's funny how easy it's actually to do, but how hard it is to then implement in the organization. So basically embedded testing today, even while some of the audience might laugh at me, but in a week you'll be able to make like some sort of a connection to a real embedded device and running acceptance tests through your pipeline with just like a simple stock hardware such as Raspberry Pi. But then getting that into your actual production pipeline is much harder, and it also has the culture and how your processes work and everything.
All right, great. I think we have time for one more question, maybe two, and then we'll close it out. Okay, Meta actually has a follow-up question for you. Sami mentioned in his reply that there are still some improvements to be made within the automation parts of CI and CD processes in the near future. What is it that you believe could be done better within CI/CD?
Okay, quite many maybe, but one to highlight here is that the coverage of the testing, that we have the coverage of the automating the full process, to have the test coverage in the level that we can really do the releasing in automated way. That's maybe the key point, but one of the maybe most important improvements in this area.
All right, great. Okay, currently that is actually all the questions that we have so far. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the question and answer session open. But Marko, I know you guys have a conference coming up you want to let us know about.
Yeah, so DevOps Conference, which we've been organizing from 2012 already, is coming up March 23rd, 24th. And we have pretty nice lineup there, honestly. So it's a free online conference. You can just register yourself in the devopsconference.com, and you will also see the lineup there.
All right, and we actually do have a link to sign up for the conference in the public chat there. It should be pinned right up at the top. So if you're interested, you can always click on that link or copy that link and check it out yourself. Just a quick reminder to the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the event, or if you just want to watch it again, you'll have the opportunity to do so. Following today's webinar, we are going to be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the devops.com website, so you can always go look for it there. Just go to devops.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. Okay, doesn't look like we're getting any more questions in from the audience. So I do want to thank everybody who did submit questions. Boy, there were some really, really great ones. And I do appreciate everybody who did take the time to send in a question for Marko or for Sami. Great stuff all the way around. Also want to do that drawing now for the $425 Amazon gift cards, something that we do with every webinar here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at, or let's do our drawing here. Our first winner today is Lena S. Congratulations, Lena. Our second winner today is Mark B. Congratulations, Mark. Our third winner today is Darren R. Congratulations, Darren. And our final winner today is Terrence M. Congratulations, Terrence. Congratulations to all four of you. We'll be following up with you via your email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. So please check your inbox. If you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder. Marko and Sami, thank you so much. Great presentation today. Lots and lots of really great information. You know, it was a great conversation all the way around, and lots of really great insight into DevOps transformations in general. So thank you both for your time and your expertise. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Also want to thank the audience for joining me today. As always, this is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody. Please stay safe.